So I'm going to go through the presentation. I think it'll end up not taking up the entire 45 minutes, and so if we do have time left over at the end, I'll do my best to answer any questions that anybody has. But with that, I think I'm just going to get started here. So hello everybody, and welcome to Preparing Custom and Contributed Code for Drupal 9. My name is Michael Lutz. I'm a senior engineer at 4 Kitchens. And today I want to kind of give a brief run through on Drupal 9 and to give you guys some idea of what's going to be involved in preparing Drupal 8 code and Drupal 8 sites that you maintain to run on Drupal 9, and what steps that you can take within a Drupal 8 installation so that you and also anybody that uses code that you write can start using that to work with both Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. So we're going to kind of walk through the overall process of upgrading a Drupal 8 site to Drupal 9 and just show you what parts of it you can do while you're still running Drupal 8 and when you're ready to upgrade to Drupal 9. So I will be honest, this presentation, I submitted it for MidCamp and for DrupalCon in Minneapolis, and it was originally something I was going to give before Drupal 9 came out, so I've had to retool it a little bit and change the tenses of some verbs, and we were going to start with what the state of Drupal 9 development was, however, Drupal 9 has already been released. So Drupal 9 was released on June 3rd. We had a few potential release windows. We weren't sure if we were going to have it out on the 3rd, but we did manage to hit all the requirements to get it out as early as we could have. So on March 13th, they were able to complete all the milestones required to release the first beta, and Drupal 9 came out on time alongside of Drupal 8.9, which is the long-term support version of Drupal 8. Because these milestones were reached on time, we were able to get the Drupal 9 out on June 3rd, and then since that release, we've had a couple of security and bug fixes out, so we're currently on version 9.02. And even before Drupal 9 was released, we'd already begun working on Drupal 9.1, which is going to be the first feature release of the Drupal 9 series, which is due out in December. Remember, we didn't really add any new features between Drupal 8.9 and 9.0. They operate with the same feature set. So 9.1 is going to be our first release with new features. So Drupal 9 is already here. So let's get to the main point of this presentation. With the new release comes the question of upgrading. So if you run or you maintain a Drupal 8 site, or if you have a Drupal 8 module, or if you have code that runs on Drupal 8, you're going to want to know what you have to do to update that code to Drupal 9. Same if you have a theme or anything else. So today we're going to focus mainly on site owners and site developers that have Drupal 8 sites that they want to upgrade to Drupal 9. However, a lot of what I talk about is going to apply to module maintainers and custom modules as well, especially when we start talking about deprecations and deprecated code a little bit later in the presentation. So in order to upgrade a site from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9, and I really want to stress that this process is an in-place upgrade. It's not create a new site, not a data migration like it might have been if you moved from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, nothing like that at all. But in order to be successful in upgrading, there are a few steps that you have to take to make sure that your code and your modules are ready. And the good news is that everything's out there that you can start doing this stuff in your existing Drupal 8 site now, and you can do pieces of it at a time and get ready, and then you can perform the final step of the update all at once. So the steps really that you have to go through is one, you want to make sure that your server supports Drupal 9, and I'll give some details in the next slides. But Drupal 9 does have different server requirements from Drupal 8. You want to make sure that any custom modules or themes are ready for Drupal 9, and I'll probably dedicate the largest section of this presentation to the step of preparing your custom code. In addition to your custom code, you're going to need to audit any contributed modules that you use on your site to make sure that they have a release out for Drupal 9. Finally, if you're on an older version of Drupal 8, you will need to update it to either Drupal 8 or Drupal 9. Drupal 8.8 or 8.9 first, because the upgrade path to Drupal 9 is only going to be supported from one of those two versions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But finally, once all that's done, you can upgrade Drupal to Drupal 9. And while that last step is clearly, the biggest and most impactful, the first 4 steps are things that you can do right now inside of Drupal 8 on an iterative basis while your Drupal 8 site continues to run in order to get prepared. And so I'm going to talk a little bit on each point right now. So the first thing we talked about is preparing your server environment. So Drupal 9 really doesn't require any more hardware or any more memory or anything like that to run than Drupal 8. And in fact, because we've removed a lot of and deprecated code, it's technically on some level a little bit more efficient to run than Drupal 8. However, in order to support future development on the platform, the minimum version of many of the supporting pieces of software has been increased. So the biggest example of this is PHP itself. So Drupal 8.8 required PHP 7. Drupal 9 is going to require PHP 7.3, and there are a few reasons why we changed the requirement there. First off, Drupal 9 is based on Symfony 4 instead of Symfony 3. And Symfony 4 is going to require PHP 7.2, so we had to have at least a minimum of 7.2, and of course 7.2 is going to reach end of life here in a few months, so requiring 7.3 just made good sense. It also allowed us to use some more modern versions of some of our dependencies, such as PHP unit, which kind of minimizes the possibility that due to some future security issue, we're going to have to all of a sudden require a higher PHP version in the middle of the Drupal 9 cycle. In addition to PHP, the minimum supported versions of the various databases have been adopted. So MySQL, you have to be on 5.7.8, MariaDB, you'll have to be on 10.2.7, SQLite 3.26, Postgre, you have to be on at least Postgre 10. Also, if you use Apache, Apache has to be on at least 2.4.7, and finally, you're going to want to be using Drush, the latest version of Drush, so that works with Drupal 9. If you're on managed hosting, it's quite likely that you meet these requirements already, but if you self-host or if you haven't updated your database in a while, you're just going to want to make sure that you meet the new requirements. A little bit more about the PHP new requirements there. So usually PHP updates tend to be backwards compatible as much as they can, but there always seems to be just a few gotchas and BC breaks to be aware of. A couple of the most common, there's a new warning that's thrown in PHP 7.2 if you try to count an uncountable object. It used to just return 0, and now it throws a warning. There's also a new warning in 7.3 if you use a continue inside of a switch statement. So, each version of PHP comes with a migration guide and a list of some of the backwards incompatible changes. And so if you're coming from an older version of PHP and you have to upgrade, you're going to want to be familiar with these and just make sure that you don't have any code that might not be compatible with the newer version. Usually there's not a whole lot to do. So I want to talk now about updating your custom code. So what does that mean? Well, deprecations, and that's everybody's absolute favorite thing. Beginning in Drupal 8, we changed the way we developed Drupal. While Drupal 8 itself was developed completely separately from Drupal 7, Drupal 9 has been in development inside of Drupal 8 for the past few years, and it's been done partially through the regular introduction of new features, and more importantly for this discussion, through the introduction of deprecations. So through each of Drupal 8's minor releases, new and improved APIs have been created, and at the same time, the old APIs have remained in the code base. These old APIs are, for the most part, all still functional in Drupal 8.8 and Drupal 8.9, which kind of leads me to one of the biggest takeaways for today, which is that Drupal 9 is just the same as Drupal 8.9 with all of these old deprecated APIs removed and some dependency updates. So what this means is that if you can adjust your code to use these newer APIs rather than the old deprecated APIs, it's going to still work in Drupal 8 and it will work in Drupal 9. And we're going to go over one of the more common examples of what that actually looks like. So as far back as I think Drupal 5, Drupal has provided an easy way to display a status message or a warning message to users. The Drupal set message method takes two arguments. It takes a message and a message type, either status, warning, or error. The method stores the message, and when the time comes to display the next page, it would display the message in a nicely colored box at the top of the page. This method still exists in Drupal 8.9, and if you call it, it's still going to work in Drupal 8.9. But it's not the right way to display a message anymore. In Drupal 8.5, this functionality was replaced using a modern service class called the Messenger service. This class has dedicated methods for adding messages of various severities and ways to retrieve and delete the messages. The service class can be overwritten, it can be mocked in testing, and it's a much more modern and useful way to package this functionality. Everyone should have started using it since it's been released in Drupal 8.5. However, over in the old bootstrap.inc file, we still have the Drupal set message function. It's been rewritten. In the code base, all it does is pass through your message to this new service. But if we just got rid of it in Drupal 8, any code that called it would be broken. So we ended up, we leave it in, and then we deprecate it. So basically, we've commented this method as being deprecated. We issued a change record telling people they should stop using it. And in Drupal 9, this method no longer exists. If you have code that calls this method, then your code is not compatible with Drupal 9. So to adapt your code for Drupal 9, you need to follow the instructions in the change record. And in this case, it might be as simple as replacing this with this. Drupal messenger add error, oops, you did something wrong. So because the new API supports things like dependency injection and additional methods, you may want to take the opportunity to further refactor to take advantage of this. You may want to inject the messenger service into any object rather than calling it from the global Drupal class. But at the end of the day, becoming compatible with Drupal 9 means replacing your calls to Drupal set message with calls to this service. And the link at the bottom of the slide just links to the change record describing what you need to do to fix this particular deprecation. So, once your deprecated code is taken care of and your module is compatible with the Drupal 9 API, the last important step in any custom modules is to declare, custom or contrib modules actually, is to declare it to be compatible with Drupal 9. Previously, in your module info.yaml file or in the .info file in Drupal 7 and older, you would declare the version of Drupal core that your module was compatible with, like this, where you'd have a line that said core 8.x. This key didn't really support the ability to declare a module to be compatible with more than one version of Drupal. So it's been replaced with this new core version requirement key, which follows composer style syntax to declare which versions of Drupal your module is compatible with. So one important thing to note here is that if you want to be compatible with versions of Drupal prior to 8.7.7, you need to leave the core key in, simply because prior to that, Drupal didn't know what the core version requirement key was. And without the core key, it can't know that you're compatible. It's okay in this case to leave the core 8.x in, and the module will still be compatible with Drupal 9, since Drupal 9 is smart enough to ignore this and use the core version requirement key instead. If you only want to be compatible with versions 8.7.7 and higher, which includes all currently supported versions of Drupal 8 right now, then you can just remove the core key from your info file. So let's talk a little bit about how you can tell where you might be using deprecated code in your custom code. There are a number of ways to find out about code that you are using that is deprecated in an existing site. We're going to talk about automated testing, about using an IDE to detect it, as well as some available static analysis tools. So if you maintain a lot of custom code, one of the best methods, I think, for detecting deprecated code use is automated testing. Deprecated code pass will trigger a generally silent error, an e-user deprecated error, that will cause your automated test to fail, and note that you triggered a deprecation error. Personally, I always find this information useful. It can get tricky to keep tests green, particularly if you're working on a contributed module and you're trying to support multiple minor versions of Drupal with the same code base. For example, if you're a maintainer trying to support 8.7, trying to support 8.8 and 8.9, and then we deprecate something in 8.8, but the replacement isn't available, and it isn't available yet, then you might get failures in the older versions, or you'll get a deprecation error in the newer version because you can't fix it yet because whatever you're trying to replace it with is not available in the oldest version of Drupal you're trying to support. Also, if you have dependencies on other modules and those other modules are executing deprecated code, you may also get failures that are not as easy to fix in the automated testing. But again, I do find the information useful. As you know, you need to monitor that dependency and make sure it's ready before you can declare yourself ready. There are ways around both of these issues, things like detecting which version of Drupal you are running and altering your code paths, or using custom error handlers and things like that, but they can be tricky and they can add technical debt in the form of workarounds that will eventually need to be removed when they're no longer needed. So depending on the code base, it may be worth it, it may not be. In addition, there are certain classes of deprecated code, primarily deprecated constants, that are unable to trigger errors, so those wouldn't be picked up by automated testing. Many IDEs are able to detect usage of deprecated code. You can see here, for example, in PHP Storm that the call to Drupal set message has a strike through, and on hover, it will tell you that this method is deprecated. I find this very useful as I'm writing code to make sure I'm not inadvertently adding any deprecated API calls to a file. It doesn't directly tell me what I should do, but you can right-click on the method and go to the method declaration. And the comments there should tell you exactly what to do. Again, very useful as you're writing code, but it doesn't give you a full list of your existing deprecated code. And so if you're trying to find all examples of deprecated code in order to get a site updated or upgraded, this may not be the easiest way to go find them all. That would be the upgrade status module. So as the course of Drupal 9 development peaked earlier this year, there were a number of static analysis tools that were introduced to help detect deprecated code usage in your product. The current best recommendation is the upgrade status module, and it started with a command line tool called Drupal check, which was based off of a PHP static analysis tool called PHP stan, and it's all graduated up into this very useful module called upgrade status, and this is really the best way right now to find deprecated code using static analysis. This module has the ability to detect deprecated code usage and list it out by module, and it will work for both your custom modules and the contributed modules that you have on your site, and it's very, very easy to use. The upgrade status module can give detailed information as to what deprecated calls are made and what their replacement code paths are. In this example here, you can see some things labeled as fixed now, others as fixed later. This was primarily useful when we were on Drupal 8.8 before Drupal 8.9 was out, because there were a number of, like I talked about before, there were a number of deprecations that maybe we couldn't quite fix because they were still trying to support Drupal 8.7. Now that Drupal 8.7 is no longer supported, most of these errors will now be able to be fixed now because we don't need to support Drupal 8.7 anymore. There are, let's see, where am I here? So the other thing to note is that We were talking earlier about you know, some workarounds that you could do to allow you to support multiple versions at the same time, including checking which version you are and calling the old path if you're on an old version, and calling the new path if you're on a new version. So if you go that route, then the static analysis tools is still going to show that you're using deprecated code because it's a static analysis tool. It can't check runtime. It just sees that you have a call to Drupal set message and says, oh, that's a problem, and it flags it. There's no way to know that in runtime that particular code would never have been called. So that's just one thing to be aware of when you're doing this. So you found all your deprecations. What do you do to fix them? So in upgrade status, your deprecation message will generally tell you what your replacement code path is and what your replacement API should be. If you need more information, you can follow the link. You can Google the deprecated function and find the related change record, which will go into detail of how to adjust your code. Many deprecations will have a one-to-one replacement. You know, a lot of what we did was move functions into services and classes. And there are tools that will help automate the process of removing this type of deprecated code from modules. The Rector project aims to help to do just that. And it is an amazing thing because I watched when this got started back in February or March, and it's just exploded from being able to manage just a couple of the top deprecations. There's currently 52 deprecations that this can automatically fix in both custom and contributed code as well. And it works by taking your module's code, converting it into this thing called an abstract syntax tree, and then it applies these pre-programmed transformations, and then it converts that tree back into actual PHP code, and it ends up updating all of these deprecated calls for you. There is, you know, this is a tool that I think is going to become more tightly ingrained with the Drupal development process in the next couple of years. I see it being possible that in the future that anytime we deprecate something in Drupal core that we might require a new Rector transformation to be created at the same time. And this would kind of let us programmatically submit patches and pull requests to contributed modules in order to update them when we add a new deprecation. And it would also provide a means to automatically keep custom code updated. You could just, every time a new version of Drupal comes out, you know, run Drupal Rector against your custom code base and get all of your API calls updated at the same time. So imagine, you know, having Drupal 10 come out and just having the ability to have everybody be ready because we've basically automated the whole process of updating contributed code and custom code automatically without having to manually go in and change everything. So I'm not going to talk too much about Rector, but other than to say it's an amazing tool. There's going to be a BOF based around Rector on Thursday. So if you have any interest in this, and they're going to be talking about, you know, how they might integrate it better with the Drupal project in general, and use the automated tool to automatically update modules and things as we go. So if you have any interest in that, look for that BOF on Thursday, and I encourage you to go to it. A quick note on custom themes. So Drupal 9 upgraded from Twig 1 to Twig 2 in its rendering system. And in general, most Twig templates and custom themes should continue to work with Drupal 9 with no changes. However, code that interacts directly with Twig, such as some custom filters and extensions and things like that, may need to be updated to work with Drupal 9. And then additionally, themes contain pre-processed functions and other PHP code like that should be checked for deprecated code usage along with the modules. So I'm personally primarily a back-end developer, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on the specifics with Twig, but I just want to point out that, you know, while generally themes will remain compatible, you're going to want to test your theme with Drupal 9 just to make sure you don't need to make any adjustments. So you've found all the deprecated code in your custom code, you fixed it all up, you're all ready for Drupal 9. the next thing to do is to do an audit of the contributed modules that you might be using. And as we saw earlier, one of the best ways to audit the modules you use is to use the upgrade status module that we saw earlier. It can tell you if the modules you are using are ready to go, and guess what? If you run it right now, you're probably going to find that many of them, if not most of them, are ready to go. The module is also able to pull the maintainer supplied information regarding their Drupal 9 plan. So in this case, you can see that the version of Blazy that I have installed here has 119 errors, but the note from the maintainer says that version 2.0 is fully Drupal 9 compatible. So I know that I need to go in and upgrade that module from version 1.0 to 2.0 before I can upgrade to Drupal 9. So when you're looking to upgrade your site from Drupal 8 to 9, your primary blocker is probably going to be the status of the contributed modules that you use, and it's probably what's going to define when you choose to take on the upgrade. So a little bit of stats. There's about roughly 9,000, 9,200 modules that are hosted on Drupal.org, and currently just over a third of them have an official release out for Drupal 9. And while that doesn't sound like a lot, it's important to remember that most of the most popular and the best maintained modules, those are going to be the ones that fall into that category. So when you go and audit the actual modules you use on a particular site, you're likely to find that the percentage of modules that are ready to go is quite a bit higher. In addition to that, there's another third or so that are, according to static analysis, look like they're completely compatible. They just don't use any deprecated code, but the maintainers still need to go in and add that core version requirement key like we talked about to their info file and actually just make a Drupal 9 release. And then there's another 800 or so that could be automated or upgraded automatically with the state of Rector where it is right now, like we talked about earlier. So in order to help maintainers get their modules updated for Drupal 9, the Drupal Association has created a project update bot, which scans through all the contrib modules that only need a .info file update or any of the ones that can be automatically fixed by Rector. And it then uses Rector and creates a patch that gets posted in the project's issue queue. The maintainer of the module needs only to test the patch and accept it in order to make a module D9 ready. And so far, around 450 projects have been patched using this automated tool and this automated bot to make them compatible. So I think that's pretty exciting. So updating Drupal core to at least 8.8. So Drupal 8 maintained a lot of code to support the database changes that are needed to upgrade from one minor version up to the next. So to keep Drupal 9 slim and kind of give us a fresh start, all of that update code has been removed. Basically, Drupal 8.9 knows everything it's got to do to the database to go from Drupal 8.2 to 8.3, from 8.3 to 8.4, from 8.4 to 8.5, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we've erased that from Drupal 9's memory. So Drupal 9, if you're on Drupal 8.2, Drupal 9 just doesn't know how to get you to 8.3 to 8.4 and so on and so on. So in order to upgrade to Drupal 9, you need to first make sure you're on at least Drupal 8.8 and hopefully 8.9 at this point now that it's been released. So hopefully you're already there, but if you are a little bit behind on updating your Drupal minor version, be aware that you are going to have to get up to 8.8 or 8.9 before you're able to upgrade to Drupal 8. So if you followed all the steps in this guide, if you've prepared all your modules and themes and audited your contributed modules, ensured that they are D9 compatible, then your upgrade to Drupal 9 should be pretty similar to doing any Drupal 9 minor version update. Ideally, this is going to be through Composer. You're going to need to adjust your Composer JSON file to allow Drupal 9 to be installed. And at that point, a simple Composer update, doing a drush to update your database, and clear your cache, and you should be all up and running on Drupal 9. Oh, somebody lost sound. Hopefully it doesn't. Not everybody. So I talked really fast, and we have about 14 minutes or so left. So I will do the best I can to pick and choose some questions from chat and see if I can provide any answers. Is it possible to fix core composer patches to fix core version requirement being wrong? Yes, but if the module also has a composer JSON file and that composer JSON file happens to say that it requires Drupal core version 8, you can't fix that with a composer patch because composer will not download and install it because it thinks it's incompatible, which means it'll never get it installed to the point where it can patch it. So the info.yaml file, that is not related to composer, that's purely for Drupal itself. So composer doesn't care about that. So composer will do it, it'll download it, and then you can patch it. But if the composer JSON file says it's incompatible with Drupal 9 for whatever reason, then you can't fix that with a composer patch. At that point, you'd basically have to fork it and put it in a Git repo and add in a new VCS into your composer JSON, a VCS source, and then rename it and you could install it that way. And it's tricky to do, but it's certainly possible. I've done it a couple of times. Do I know how the upgrade status knows which modules are available for D9? It looks for release available on Drupal.org. So upgrade status will, at its back end, uses PHP-Stan and Drupal check to do a static analysis of the actual code. So when it says there are X number of errors or there are this many or whatever, that's a static analysis of it actually looking through the code that's in your installation. And then on top of that, it then uses the Drupal.org API to query Drupal.org for that project's description page, and there's a field in that description page for saying what your Drupal 9 plan is. It's just basically a text field. They can type anything they want. I will never support Drupal 9, or we need help to support Drupal 9, or follow this issue in the issue queue to see where we are on supporting Drupal 9, whatever that is. So upgrade status queries the Drupal.org API to go get that information, and it sticks that on the line next to the project and next to the errors that it's found through its own static analysis. What else we got? Yeah, composer version aliases. There are other composer tricks you can do if you really need to get around composer issues. Lucas is right. Let's see. What else we got? I still have another 10 minutes. What is the appropriate tag to change in Composer for 8.9 to 9? So, I don't have an example of it that I can show easily, but if you have a site that you started either with the new Composer scaffolding that's a Drupal core, or the original Drupal project scaffolding that was available back prior to like 8.7.7, it'll create a Composer JSON for your whole project, and then you get a new module with Composer require blah 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 blah. At the top of that is going to say requires Drupal greater than 8 or whatever you started with. Usually it just says I'm sorry, not greater than caret, which means any version of Drupal 8 higher than this, but not anything that's Drupal 9. So that's what prevents you from, if you run a Composer update in general on Drupal 8.8 or 8.9, that prevents it from just automatically trying to update you to 9. So you likely will need to change that, and then look through. Really depends on what you have. There might be other things in dev dependencies. If you use let's see, the old Webflow, like strict checking that kept vendor depend, and there's a new one of those in core that you should be using too, that keeps your vendor dependencies locked to a specific version, so you don't inadvertently get a new version that breaks something. There's a few other a few other things like that that'll be locked to a specific Drupal version. So you just need to check and kind of audit your Composer JSON and make sure that that's all updated. You know, in addition, we went back a few slides. I was talking about this, you know, this one that I had here. Where was it? Nope. Yeah. So this one, for example, you know, in this particular example site, so I had Blazy, you know, 1.0, and that was locked in the Composer JSON for this, you know, Blazy caret 1.0. It's not going to get version 2 until I change that Composer JSON. So, you know, I can see here, you know, maybe I didn't realize there was a 2.0. Maybe I just wasn't ready to test a major version update, and I was afraid, or maybe there was some breakage change and I needed to adjust something for it to work. You know, in each case it might be different. So sometimes if this tells you that one of your modules needs a major version update in order to be compatible with Drupal 9, you may also have to change that in your Composer JSON. And in that case, you would also need to make sure that that major version change doesn't break something, because often a major version change means there's some sort of backwards incompatible change, either a change in the way something is stored or a change in the API or something like that. So you'd have to review each one of those and make sure that you can do the major update change, and then you'd have to execute it. Aurora DB, you know, I don't know. I don't know Aurora DB off the top of my head and what their versioning is, but there is. I lost it. It's before all this. I don't think these slides are posted, but I need to. But if you Google where this hosting requirements page, all of this information came from this this link down here. So if you go there, I don't know that it lists anything about Aurora, but that would be a place that I would check. When Drupal Rector replaces the deprecated code, does it just do the simple one-for-one switch, or if the code is in a class, will it attempt to use dependency injection of services, etc.? I can't give you an exact answer on that because I haven't looked through all of the transformations. I believe there are cases where it can. It really depends on how complicated the transformation function is. I've only briefly looked at how Rector works in the back end, and it basically works with you know, a number of plugins. Like I said, it converts the code into an abstract syntax tree, which is really, in PHP, it's almost like you know, an object, and there might be a node which represents a command, and then another that links to two parameters, which are also nodes. I don't know the exact terminology, but it creates it into this kind of generic format, and then applies the transformation on that. So at some level, it's capable of detecting that, all right, this particular command node that I'm switching is inside of a class, or it's not inside of a class, or it's, you know, it's you know, just a function or something like that. So, you know, in theory, some of the more well-developed ones are capable of doing more advanced things like that. But I can't tell you exactly off the top of my head that they all are, or even that many of them are, or that it can even detect, you know, there might be some cases that are just complicated enough that it's not worth trying. It might cause more problems than it solves. So. Oh, I'm supposed to plug the survey for this session. So there's a link up in chat if you'd like to rate and tell me how much I've babbled on. Let's see, upgrading to D9 via Composer should be easy as long as all the deprecated code has been resolved. Yep, yeah, and then that's the thing is that like I said, make sure your Composer JSON allows Drupal 9 to be installed, and then it's just a Composer update. Do I recommend upgrading to Drupal 9 or Drupal 8 from Drupal 7? That's a good question for me because I manage the migration system for, or I'm one of the maintainers of the migration system in Drupal for migrating from Drupal 7 to 8 and 9. And the answer is you should upgrade to the most recent version that that has the contributed modules that you need. If the contributed modules you need are already for Drupal 9, do it straight to Drupal 9. We didn't take anything out of the migration system, so it's all, it's basically all the same. The Drupal doesn't care whether it's on 8 or 9 when it tries to bring something in from 7. All of those APIs are all the same. The core migration system all uses Drupal 9 APIs no matter what version you're on, so that's all good. So if Drupal 9 has all the features you need, and if the contributed ecosystem in Drupal 9, if enough of the modules exist for you to do what you need to do in that site, then I would recommend going to Drupal 9. If you're waiting on some and you want to get started now, you know, it's fine to go from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8.9, and then just make sure any custom code that you write is Drupal 9 ready, and then monitor your contrib modules, and when those are ready for Drupal 9, then you can just do the Composer upgrade from Drupal 8. Got what? Just another couple of minutes here. Pin depth. Oh, you guys are just talking about core recommended. That's the one I was thinking of. Used to be or core pinned, core dev pinned. Yeah, that used to be a Webflow package. A link for my presentation slides. I need to go send these to my, I got to go find my session node and see that where I can do that, but I will share these publicly. Yeah, maybe I can even do it right now. And maybe I can provide a link. Hold on. Let me just make these public. I'm embarrassed to say I manage, if there are any projects that are not D9 compatible that you would like to focus on as part of this week's effort. I'm a little embarrassed to say I manage a couple or maintain a couple of modules that are not well, or not greatly used. They're ones that I needed to solve a particular problem that I haven't yet put out D9 releases for because I haven't needed them. And a couple of them have automated patches waiting that I need to do, so that's what I need to do. But I don't know, I don't know off the top of my head if there's any, like a lot of the big ones, I know commerce is taken care of, paragraphs should be good to go. Most of the biggest ones I know are ready to go. But I know there will also, I'm sure, be a table to help contrib get ready for anything that maybe can't be covered in Rector. Let's see. There we go. Anyone with the link can view. All right. Here's a link to the slides, and I'm going to get them. I'm going to get that link posted in wherever the session node is. So, anything special to keep in mind migrating from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9? The same things you have to keep in mind going from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. Come see me in the migration Slack channel in the Drupal Slack, and we'll be happy to help you with all of that. But there's really, going from 7 to 8 versus 7 to 9, there's not really any change in the way or the methods that you do that. And you go to 8 from 7 to 8, and you go from 7 to 9 in exactly the same way. Do you recommend using Composer update to upgrade to D9 compatible modules or update modules individually? I mean, hopefully you're using Composer. Yeah, I mean, Composer is the best way to manage your modules for sure. That don't have dependency injection throughout are still compatible. Yeah, I mean, you know, dependency injection is the best practice, but you can still call that main Drupal class from inside of a class and get access to the services in the container. So, I mean, it works even if it's not great. a link to the migration channel. I'm not sure how to share a link to it, but if you join the Drupal Slack, it's just, the channel name is just migration. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lucas. All right, well, I think that's my time. So I appreciate everybody for listening. And I hope you guys enjoy DrupalCon. Contribution Day Friday. Please fill out the survey for this session. The Rector BOF on Thursday is also going to be another good one to go to. So take care and come find me in Drupal Slack.